Develop criteria for evaluation. The suitability, acceptability, and feasibility (SAF) framework is a widely used method for developing criteria to evaluate strategic options. Organizations often face several possible strategies after completing environmental and internal analysis. The SAF framework provides a structured way to judge which option best fits the organization's objectives and circumstances. Suitability examines whether the strategy addresses the organization's strategic position and environmental challenges. Acceptability considers whether stakeholders will support the strategy and whether the expected returns justify the risks involved. Feasibility assesses whether the organization has sufficient resources and capabilities to implement the strategy effectively. These three criteria together provide a balanced and systematic basis for strategic evaluation. Developing evaluation criteria involves translating the SAF principles into specific analytical questions and measurable indicators. For suitability, organizations assess whether a strategy fits the external environment, addresses opportunities and threats, and aligns with organizational capabilities. Acceptability criteria focus on stakeholder expectations, risk tolerance, and expected financial performance. Managers often examine financial indicators such as profitability forecasts, return on capital employed, and shareholder value to assess whether the outcomes are satisfactory. Feasibility criteria focus on whether the organization possesses the necessary financial resources, technology, human skills, and operational capacity to implement the strategy. These clearly defined criteria help ensure that strategic choices are evaluated consistently and objectively. Financial and strategic analysis tools are commonly used to support SAF evaluation criteria. For example, when assessing acceptability, organizations may perform financial analyses such as net present value (NPV), cost-benefit analysis, ratio analysis, or expected value calculations. These methods estimate whether a strategy will deliver adequate returns to shareholders and other stakeholders relative to its risks. For feasibility, techniques such as budgeting, cash flow forecasting, and resource planning are used to assess whether the organization can obtain the necessary resources and funding. By combining strategic analysis with financial evaluation tools, organizations can create robust criteria that support informed decision-making during the strategic choice process. Evaluate options against criteria. Once evaluation criteria have been established, each strategic option must be systematically assessed against the SAF framework. Managers analyze how well each option fits the organization's external environment and internal capabilities to determine suitability. For example, a strategy that exploits a major market opportunity and builds on existing capabilities may be considered highly suitable. In contrast, strategies that conflict with organizational strengths or ignore key environmental trends may be less suitable. This stage ensures that the organization avoids strategies that appear attractive in theory but do not align with its strategic context or competitive position within its industry. Acceptability evaluation focuses on the reactions and expectations of stakeholders and the financial outcomes of the strategy. Stakeholders may include shareholders, employees, customers, suppliers, regulators, and the wider public. Each group may have different expectations regarding financial returns, risk levels, and ethical considerations. Managers must evaluate whether the proposed strategy will provide adequate returns while remaining within acceptable risk levels. Financial techniques such as NPV, shareholder value analysis, and sensitivity analysis are often used to assess whether expected financial performance meets stakeholder expectations. If a strategy produces unacceptable risk or insufficient returns, it may be rejected even if it is strategically suitable. Feasibility evaluation determines whether the organization has the capability and resources required to implement the proposed strategy successfully. Even a suitable and acceptable strategy may fail if the organization lacks sufficient funding, skilled personnel, technological infrastructure, or operational capacity. Managers therefore assess whether financial resources can be raised, whether required skills and facilities are available, and whether implementation challenges such as supply chains or regulatory approvals can be managed. This analysis ensures that strategic decisions are realistic and achievable. By evaluating each option against feasibility criteria, organizations reduce the risk of adopting strategies that cannot be effectively executed. Recommend appropriate options. After evaluating each strategic option using the SAF framework, decision-makers must recommend the option that best satisfies the evaluation criteria. The recommended strategy should demonstrate strong suitability with the organization's strategic environment, deliver acceptable returns for stakeholders, and be feasible with available resources. In many cases, the chosen strategy is not simply the most attractive option but the one that provides the best balance across all three SAF dimensions. Managers may also combine elements from different options to create a coherent strategy that maximizes strengths while minimizing risks and resource constraints. Strategic recommendations often involve comparing several alternatives and selecting the option that offers the most sustainable competitive advantage. Decision-makers consider whether the strategy will improve organizational performance, strengthen competitive positioning, and support long-term objectives. In addition to SAF criteria, organizations may also apply tests such as whether the strategy creates or maintains competitive advantage and whether the benefits are sustainable over time. Strategies that align closely with the organization's capabilities and market opportunities while delivering measurable performance improvements are more likely to be recommended. The final recommendation should also consider implementation implications and organizational readiness for change. Even if a strategy meets SAF criteria, managers must ensure that the organization can effectively integrate it into its operations and strategic plans. This may involve allocating resources, developing action plans, communicating strategic objectives, and preparing employees for organizational changes. A clear recommendation should therefore explain why the selected option is superior, how it meets the SAF criteria, and how it will contribute to achieving strategic objectives. This ensures that strategy formulation leads smoothly into implementation and long-term strategic success.